What up, everyone? It's your favorite Brooklyn boy, Anthony Carano, coming to you live with Cafe Meets Coaches. This will be a podcast centered around contemporary physical education for the masses. We'll go over a range of different topics such as skill acquisition, fitness planning, and how movement plays a role in the development of mind, body, and spirit. My goal is to help bridge the gap between academia and practice, connecting friends, colleagues, and future professionals with the motivation to move and the knowledge to do so efficiently. As the title suggests, some of the shows will be recorded in person at a cafe. If this is one of those episodes, you'll hear some background noise in the podcast. Hopefully you too will feel as though you're there with us. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. Boom. All right, I think we are good here. See the top of my head a bit. That's all good. All right, my brother Ronny.
My brother Anthony, what up, though?
Yeah, so I've been dying to get someone on the show that I could say is my boy, and I finally got you on. I brought on Liz from Physical Literacy. We have Mike Boyle. We got my sumo guy, Konishki. I don't know if you got to see. I put a little clip on Instagram, but I was like, I'm dying to get someone on who's legit my boy, and we can talk more casually. And I could say for sure that you have inspired my journey in regard to physical education, physical literacy more than anything. But you've definitely inspired my journey. So it's more than just having someone on who's my boy. It's having someone who also shares passion. And professionally, even outside of professionally, we definitely share passion. We bond in many different ways, but you're also a rock star in the field. So there's nothing cooler than that. Like, I could say you're my boy, I could say we share passion, but you're also a sought after person. And when we started working for Office of School Wellness, you say it all the time, like, it wasn't necessarily something you sought after yourself. People sought after you and were like, hey, you'd be good for this. And same way me saying like, yo, I want you on the podcast. So you're definitely a sought after person, and it's because you know your stuff. I've said it before, I used to attend the workshops and I used to watch you and say, I want to be like that guy. So I said that to Vic and T the other day because I saw T, but you would do the physical education workshops for phys ed teachers, and I'd be there and I'd be like, I want to be like that kid, man, he's awesome. But so anyway, I'm finally glad to have you on. Before you do an intro or anything like that, I always do these cards, which I actually got from Vic. So you're gonna pick out a random one. It's like a casual question, and you can answer any of the questions on there.
Is there any famous person or character you can impersonate really well? I would have...
There's 3 questions there, so you can pick which one you want.
Awesome.
And if you want that one, you can.
All right. What was your favorite thing on the playground when you were a kid? What quality do you appreciate the most in a friend? I'm going to go with the middle one. What was your favorite thing on the playground when you were a kid? I would definitely say the monkey bars, swings, things of that nature. I love engaging in upper body mobility, flexibility, strength, power. So I always love anything I can hang from, trees, whatever the case may be. So thank you for the question. I appreciate that, brother Ant.
All right. So maybe like a intro of yourself, like I guess professionally, I know you have a long resume, but maybe a couple highlights along the way.
Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I feel deeply inspired by how you introduced me, and just by the way, I'm equally inspired, motivated by all the things that you do and that you always add to professionally, as a friend, as a human being, in multiple spheres. So yeah, this is definitely a meeting of the minds and of like-minded human beings. Definitely love when we get together and are able to share in our passion. Ronny Rodriguez, 37-year-old male, Born in the Dominican Republic, I have been a physical education professional for 14 years now, mostly working with students directly. Part of that time where I met Anthony at the Office School Wellness Programs as an instructional coach for physical education. Some of my career highlights, I would say, would be connecting with human beings and inspiring them to be the best versions of themselves. And that has, for me, I've been fortunate to have experienced that in multiple capacities. As a teacher of elementary school children, seeing them master a skill that they thought they couldn't do, and also as a trainer of professionals and helping teachers to understand and be able to implement content and concepts that perhaps they felt were beyond their capacity. So definitely, those are the highlights, being able to make connections with human beings. So thank you.
All right, brother. So I brought you on mostly to talk about culture and embodiment. So for example, I know on your Instagram, it says fully present here and now. And when it comes to physical education, many people think of fitness right away, but I'm thinking of a bit broader. Just being embodied, being connected to the world, our physical connection to all things. And so I guess what I wanted to really talk about today was maybe culture, how we view maybe fitness nowadays versus maybe not how we should, but different perspectives. And talking a little bit about the yin side as opposed to the yin and yang, right? I always talk about balance. I think that's important. And talking a little bit more of the soft, the yin, meditation, embodiment, so things in that realm. But so when it says fully present here and now on your Instagram, what can you explain that a bit, or what do you mean by that?
Awesome. That's definitely me announcing to myself and to the world that I am someone who has fully integrated my mind, emotion, sensations to be able to completely be in this moment, not thinking about before, after, but fully immersed in the experience that I'm having. And from that immersion, being able to operate at a level that I feel is true to me, and thus am fully present here and now. I feel that in speaking with a lot of people and seeing my own journey, so I'll speak more so from my own journey, there were times in my life where I was very focused on one thing, whether that was academics, athletics, career, and in doing so, we tend to put all of our energy endeavors into becoming something, whatever that may be for you. That alienates us from our full experience, which goes beyond these constructs which society, culture, our parents, our aspirations put upon us, and kind of constricts our attention to something in the social realm that we've constructed as human beings, attaining this, attaining that, becoming better at this, achieving more, getting more. Being fully present here and now allows me to be a human being and thus connect with other human beings and my environment in a way that's authentic and not predicated on how it benefits me in some constructed human game. Without going too long-winded and all over the place, I feel that that's what I mean by being fully present here and now. I think that's what, in my approach to teaching, why I'm able to connect with the students in front of me, because I can feel what's actually happening, connect with them as individuals and as a collective. When I'm engaging in training of adults, I do my best to model exactly what we will experience when we are in front of children, in front of students. So being authentic, it's a matter of authenticity that is derived from being able to fully immerse yourself in this present moment.
So, you mentioned the piece about like the value of less, I think, or kind of like, or it just ties into it a little bit, a question that I had, but I don't remember the exact quote, and I know we talked about it before, but it's something along the lines of the world always teaches you the value of having more, but they don't always teach you the value of having less. When it comes to things like meditation, So thinking about the physical side of things, the act of literally sitting down and doing nothing, the act of not moving your body, but yet being physically more connected to yourself, in some way. But do you meditate? Do you add that in your, I don't even want to say, I know for you it's more of a lifestyle. I don't even want to say like an exercise routine, but do you meditate?
Definitely. At the beginning of my process, I would say it was right at the end of my college career as an athlete. So in college, I played football and I also ran track. And I was obviously student athlete, so had all of those things that I was constantly in what we would call the yang side of things. I was always doing. In order to become faster, I had to constantly be sprinting, training, eating a certain way. I naturally was smaller, so I had to adapt almost similar to like a bodybuilder's type of eating regimen to be able to maintain weight. That also consumed a lot of doing. I was constantly on. I would say during my college career, I was probably engaged in moderate to vigorous activity for upwards of 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for years. Towards transitioning from college into my professional life as a teacher, my partner and I got pregnant with our daughter. I felt that the way that I had been conducting my life was ultra yang, ultra masculine, and that I would not be able to connect with the elementary school children, which I then got a job first as an elementary school teacher. I did not want that, but it's where the universe placed me. Also, was about to become a parent to a daughter. I didn't even know, I didn't have any sisters, even though I was raised predominantly by my mother. Still, so it kind of ushered me into yoga. By getting into yoga, I started to first meditate more with analytical, something I was already good at by being a student, an academic. So I first started by reading the Dhammapada, the Bhagavad Gita, listening to tons of hours of people discussing and breaking down philosophies. So my entry point to meditation was more of an academic endeavor, philosophy. Then from there, as I started doing more of the movement base of that meditation, which is yoga, I got into handstands and calisthenics. I started to learn that slowing down was something that I was going to need to do in order to connect with a broader range of human beings. So for me, it was for an end. The end was to make deeper connections. How I was introduced to fitness, given that I was in football and in track, very elitist in a way. So if you weren't the fastest, the strongest, or one of the top performing athletes, then I almost wasn't going to be able to relate, because this is what I was constantly aspiring to and wanting to be like. Also, that's reinforced by the society. Be the best, strive for the best, more. What I learned that alienates you from the majority of people. Although society exalts you for it, it is an alienating process to become the very best, or one of the best, or perceived that way. Slowing down allowed me to, one, heal from a lot of traumas that even put me in a position to constantly seek so much social validation and attention. That's another topic to speak to that. But the slowing down honestly helped me connect to my humanity. I feel for a longer part of it, when I was ultra yang, I was using my body as a machine. If I eat this much, I'm gonna gain this weight. If I run this much, I'm gonna be this fast. If I do these drills, I'm gonna be this agile. It was a machine. I was living machine-like. If I read these many books, I'm gonna get this grade. So constantly in the future, ultra anxiety based. Slowing down allowed me to feel my heart, feel my breath. How are my feet right now? How is my presence affecting the environment around me? How conscious am I of how I'm acting, behaving, how I'm breathing, how my posture is? Because as I slow down, I learn how much of the mundane things that we take for granted, because we're so much in go, are pivotal to our overall well-being. So slowing down, I think, saved my life and helped me to become a person that can be inspiring to myself, to my children, and to others around me.
No, it's interesting. We had dude Konishki who was on, and one of the things he said was that he was always go, 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 super aggressive. But he noticed that a lot of people who he would compete against would see that and use it to their advantage. So meaning they would intentionally try to get him angry, to try to get him to like go extra hard and then use his weight against him or whatever it may be. And he said when he'd have an injury, because he was too young to think about meditation or slowing down or anything like that, he said but when he had an injury, he naturally had to slow down and be more conscious. And he said when he was conscious, he was more calm. And he said when he was the calm beast was when he performed the best. And, you know, I think about that in the dojo all the time. Some people need to, you know, they're more yin and maybe need to train some yang, and maybe they're more yang and need to train some yin, but there's no doubt that you need to have both in order to perform well. You need work, you need play, you need to be excited but not too excited. You need to be calm but not too calm where you're falling asleep. Like you have to be able to have access to the whole entire spectrum. And I think a lot of people only have access to one. It's either you're calm or either you're aggressive. And I think having access to the whole spectrum is what is beneficial. And you know how you said, you know, you were very yang heavy for a while in your life. And then eventually you realize the importance of that sitting and doing nothing. And I can definitely say the same for me too. I've never really understood meditation. I never understood why I would sit and do nothing. Why would I, you know, do those things? But, you know, I guess the yang side of me had to understand it consciously, which is unfortunate. But I had to understand it consciously in order to then say, oh, okay, this is actually something valuable. But, you know, like the benefits that it brought me are definitely above and beyond. So just to be able to sit in a moment and check in with myself, to be able to, like you said, feel my heart, feel my body, feel different parts of my body, to not always be on, to know that I can shut off, to know that I can control my mind. So, you know, almost like that opponent with Konishki where he's able to control him and make him more aggressive. Am I always on and aggressive because I want to be? Or is it because my environment is making me that way? Can I actually shut off? Or am I just literally always on? You know, oh, another task, another thing, another this, another that. And I've realized to be able to sit and do nothing, I'm actually learning self-control more than anything. And I'm actually able to be I can steer my own car a bit more. It's not that I'm just reacting to everything and I'm always on. I can actually shut off. I can tune in. I can feel. And you know, being a martial artist, that intuitive piece is massive. And I know you could probably speak to it as well. But if I can't feel myself, feel the environment, and feel my opponent, you can't perform well. You know, you can't perform well. So I know you talk about intuition a lot, and you made me think about intuition a lot. And luckily, I've had the martial art background to really help facilitate and understand it. But I think, you know, cognitively, you helped me understand it a lot more. So intuition, feeling yourself, feeling the environment, and feeling other people. What is the value of that in your life? Or what do you think is the value? Yeah, what has that brought you? Just curious.
Awesome. So the analytical mind always seeks to understand, to know. I was able to remove myself from a constantly anxious state of wanting to know everything and having to have a plan, which, as we know from the sports world, if you are consciously or cognitively responding to something, you're already late. Because those responses, if processed through the prefrontal cortex, by that time, that other opponent has already moved out of the way. It has to come from a place of no mind, no thought. And how you achieve that is through repetitively engaging yourself in said actions, allowing yourself to let your natural responses, which are in tune and at a higher processing level than our intentional responses, which have to first analyze what is going on. Then, should I move left, should I move right? By that time, it's too late. That response has to happen without you cognitively having to think about it. That, as a teacher, as a parent, as someone who loves to be in great relationships with human beings, it is a absolutely necessary ability to increase your intuition and your ability to feel what is happening so that you can respond truly. Because many times, many human beings not being able to understand how they actually feel, they're constantly reacting. And if you are at a calm state, you can see their entire cycle happening in front of you. And then you can better, at the very minimum, make them aware of what it is that they're doing. And be kind of like a conscious observer in the middle, observing everything as is happening and unfolding, not responding, not judging. And thus you're in a constant state of meditation. That's, the intuitive side leads you to be in a constant state of meditation. Everything you do is meditation because you're that in tune with yourself and aware and operating at a level deeper than, is this going to improve my social ranking? Is not. That those are limiting things that most people operate from that perspective, even if they're not aware. Our conditioning teaches us to operate that way. So intuition, and to paraphrase Albert Einstein, we've created a society that treats the servant, which is the cognitive mind, and regards the gift, which is the intuition, as the servant, So we need to really help people to understand that their intuitive mind is far greater and will always be, for a reason, than their cognitive attention could ever be. And that's just where we are now at our evolutionary stage. Not my words, you can research in many places and just think about the neuron distribution of our brain. Most of the neurons exist in the part of our brain that is used for movement. So I'll leave it there.
Now do you know why I brought him on? Oh man, that just gets me thinking so much. So what do you do to I don't even want to use the word train. So it's funny, once you start going into this world, and we'll talk about culture and stuff in a minute, but do you do anything to improve your intuition?
Right, and breathing exercises. To be honest, when you are competing with people in martial arts, as Anthony is far more proficient and can speak to it, any type of sport where you have to react and respond to stimulus. This, if done intentionally, will improve your intuition, because intuition is the way that your brain, your nervous system is connected and in tune with everything happening around you, where your body is in relation to other bodies in space, and how to respond according to the specific task that you want to achieve. And some of those tasks, which we don't have to think about, are keeping our body alive, keeping ourselves free from harm. Our intuition is going to guide us in that direction a lot better than our cognitive mind would, which is going to tell us to arm ourselves, build citadels where we separate ourselves from the environment, because that's the way the analytical mind would think of defending against the unknowingness that is the environment. Why we human beings have constructed civilizations and societies that are in many ways anti-natural and not in alignment with that natural process. We try to control natural processes. It's cold outside, let's put heat. It's warm outside, let's have the AC on. We don't want to walk because we don't want to feel the pain on our feet, so let's build a machine that allows us to not feel that pain. And in doing so, we weaken our intuitive processes. So intuition to me is movement. The more you move and the more consciously you do that, the more intuitive you become, to say it in a 1-6-6 line. Intuition is increased through movement.
What's that last part? Intuition is what?
Increased through movement.
Do you ever do anything like a mindful walk, like where you're a little more intentional about it?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. So every day during my lunch period for the last several years now, I always go outside of the building, whether it's raining, snowing, thundering, whatever the case may be, and I take as long of a walk as the time allows for that day. So that's a normal part of my routine. And in doing that, I ground myself, I connect with whatever environment I'm working in. So when I was in Long Island City, I knew that whole area back and forth well because I was doing walks there every day. Now that I'm in District 6 school, I know this area a little bit better. I'm constantly walking there. So connection, like real-time connection to the environment, where things are, how things move, how people connect with themselves. And again, I think I can also read about that and gain some important aspects of that understanding, but that's not going to compare to immersing myself in that experience.
Yeah, do you do any sports or activities now too?
Not in a competitive sense at all. So the sport, I do engage in activities with my children a lot at the park. So I'm constantly playing tag, running. In my PE classes, I'm constantly engaged in modeling whatever it is that we're going to do, and I will often engage in the activities with the children. So I wouldn't call that a sport, but it's sports-like because I am intentionally doing it for the sake of improving an ability and skill, not necessarily for the sake of winning and losing. I do yoga still. I do handstands with the intent of improving my skills upside down. You know, it's intentional in that way. I'm still in calisthenics, so I do a lot of pull-ups, push-ups, lower body squats, lunges, all of those body weight movements. I ride bikes a lot. In the summer now, I'll start swimming again. I like to climb. So essentially, I love a lot of outdoors type of activities. And when I'm indoor, it still leans more towards the body weight. So manipulating myself. So I think that's another way to become very intuitive and conscious of your body. If you're constantly using your body and are aware of what you're doing.
And damn, there's so many. Every time you say something, I have like 5 questions I want to ask, but I'll try to stick to a couple at a time here. So when I was talking to Liz Durden-Meyer, she talked about prioritizing movement. Like I said like how can we build a community or a society that that actually is more physically literate, and the big thing she said is about priority. Like how do we prioritize it? And it sounds like a simple answer, but it really is maybe that simple, because I think we don't need to know how it might be structured yet. Like, when people say you don't need to, take one step at a time, you don't need to maybe see the end of the road, eventually you'll get there. And same thing with this, like, I don't know what it will necessarily look like, but you don't have to know. When people prioritize it, it'll just unfold. And, but so my hope is with like conversations like this, people understand the value of prioritizing. Because I know even myself in my work day, you could get caught up. If you don't take that block and say, no, this is my hour. I am not sitting in my chair. I'm getting up and I'm walking. I'm going for a walk. Or I'm eating while I'm not looking at a computer. Or, maybe being in the phys ed classroom, I'm shutting my door so no one bothers me. Or whatever it is, it really is about prioritizing it. And then that comes from understanding the value of it. And I think these conversations will hopefully help and inspire people to realize the value of these things and then make it a priority in their life. But so, as a parent, because I know in my last podcast with Mike Boyle, he asked me, he said, you're not do you have kids? I said, no, I don't have kids. And he said, it's a little easier to have some of the mindset you have when you don't have kids and stuff, yet it's hard to sometimes embed these things in your life and actually prioritize it, and sometimes capitalizing on 1 hour, which I do totally, back to the yin yang, I do believe in yang. I also do believe in yin. So as we're talking yin, this isn't to shame, anything he's saying or anything like that. It's just to get the other's perspective. But he was saying, you only have, you don't have that much time in a day. It's 1 hour. You got to capitalize on that hour. He's like, our functional fitness program, will really help you to capitalize on your time and get the most bang for your buck. And I get it. But my thing was, should people be involved in a sport or an activity? And like sometimes we put the horse before the carriage kind of deal, where like we're all, people lifting in a gym, which that really originated with improving performance, but yet you're never doing anything performance related. Like, it's like, all right, you're lifting to be better at experiencing the world, and then you never experience the world. Like, maybe we should experience the world a bit first. Maybe we should go out and climb. Maybe we should play a sport, play pickleball, whatever. So I guess I have two questions that I'm getting at here, which one will be, what do you think about that? Should people experience the world more? And then the other question is going to be, how do you make it work in your life? Because you do have kids, you do have a full-time job, and you do have all those things that would be classified as an adult in his eyes. And so yeah, I guess let's start with let's start with if you even feel that that's true first. Do you feel that people should experience the world more, be involved maybe in activities more than being in a weight room or in a gym setting?
I'm going to answer your first question assertively and directly. 100% agree that people should experience the world first. But my answer is based on my experience. I was born in a third world country. I spent my formative years there. My first conscious awareness of myself, where I remember, this is must be my first memory. I was out in the street by myself, just being out. So my partner, who's American, and her parents are American, and her grandparents and grandparents and grandparents, she's as American as you can get, says to me often, she's never met someone who likes being outside as much as me. But my bias comes from coming from a culture where being outside every day is the norm. Also, the weather is conducive to that. It is perpetual summer where I come from. I understand that that is different in every region of the world. So I don't want to say what is best for all, because the environmental factors do dictate some of that. But I say that you should experience the world as you would like to. So if that is being outside, then prioritize that. That's going to increase your mental health. If that's being in the gym, prioritize that, because that's also going to improve your mental health. In whatever form it comes and shows up for you that is relevant for all of the factors that make you who you are, you should engage in it. But the priority should be, I am a living human being that has to move in order to be. That is all. Movement, in my eyes, is the all in all. It is everything. Without movement, our heart does not work, our lungs do not work, the blood does not circulate. Everything is movement, from my vantage point. So to go counter to that, in my vantage point, is to be anti-natural. So there are societies that are, by in fact, anti-natural and are teaching people to be anti-natural. The way I've been able to infuse movement into every area of my life, when I was in the office, as you knew, Anthony, I had a standing desk. I would always advocate for movement breaks in the office, and would do them and engage in them, even in whatever attire. I got to a point where my fashion mirrored, although I was in an office setting, I called BizFit, where I will wear like athleisure type wear, where it's more movable. There is also attire that is built for movement that you can wear in the office. I don't want to deviate too far there. In my life and role as a parent is ensuring that I'm taking my kids outside to the park, and not just taking them to the park and then sitting down and watching them play, but actually actively engaging in that play with them. That's a benefit to me and my capacity. That's a benefit to them and their capacity. And then now it's not, so I don't compartmentalize it. I'm gonna now go work out separate from my family, and now I incorporate into everything. In terms of now even at a deeper level, our apartment, I have gymnastics rings hanging from the hallway. I had to come to that compromise as a man that did not grow up that way. But now, infusing that. We have a treadmill in the living room. We had bars. So all areas of my life, there is something that reminds me I have to move, I have to train, I want to be. And this may sound dismissive, but just we're getting personal here. The thing that I told my children, the code to live by, 2 things you want to avoid at all costs while you're alive: being weak and pathetic. And that comes from just giving you a part of myself that's a bit, I guess, maybe arrogant or overly confident, because I've been able-bodied my entire life and have devoted my life to maximizing on my physical literacy. So I am biased in saying that. But also compassionate enough to understand that it is within everyone to reach whatever level is possible for them given their limitations. But everyone should prioritize it. It's in their best interest to prioritize it.
Yeah, man, you hit on a lot of good stuff there. I love that which ties also into the physical literacy philosophy, but the individualistic approach, in the sense of what's fit for you is not always fit for everyone. And it's always a good reminder, and something I say often: if you do enjoy the gym life, then that is for you. Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with that. I guess when I think about those questions, it's funny, I think about a lot of questions and I've pre-thought about them, and the way they come out might not always be exactly the way I want them to. But wow, I just lost my train of thought with that too. What was the last thing I just said there?
Physical literacy.
How did I just do that? Physical literacy, but there was a piece that I was getting at.
The fact of individuation. Some people love the gym, some people love being outside, but it has to be specifically tailored.
Yes, right. So tailoring it to each individual person. And there are people that do function best in the gym life. There are people who may have a goal that's bodybuilding. There are people who have a goal that, maybe they just aren't, maybe they function better in that setting. They just want to get it done. Maybe there's a treadmill in their house, they run on the treadmill, that works for them. But there's some people in the world that I feel like it's not fit for them, but they're doing it because that's the culture that we have for fitness. So meaning, like, I don't want to go to the gym, but I'm going to the gym because of the fact that that's what I'm supposed to do to get fit. So I guess that's where I raise that point with is, it's not what you have to do to get fit. There are other ways if you are, and I guess maybe as myself, those are struggles that I've had, and I am a little bit of both. I do enjoy the gym setting, but I do enjoy experiencing the world, and that's my bias, in there as well.
And I'll speak to it. When I was training for football, I became a gymaholic. You would always find me in the gym. I even attended a pro combine after my senior year, where I did 225 pounds 15 times, ran a 4.69 40. My vertical was 30 inches. Again, I reached those through being constantly in the gym, constantly on the track. That was my way of life. Once I had children, once I now had a career that was outside of that type of setting, going to that setting had to be prioritized, like, an hour, 2 hours. As things become more and more busy, that was not going to work for me, especially now with a toddler at home who cannot come to the gym. Unless I know there are some gyms who have that reality. They have a daycare in there and all sort of stuff, so you have to find what works for you. What I came to realize, too, we do live in a capitalist society. So going outside is free, at least now. It's still free. It's still free to go outside. When being in the gym, for the most part, costs money. So, of course, anything that you have to pay for in our society will be advertised and promoted more than something that can be done for free. Think about taking medication versus lifestyle change, which is promoted more. taking medication. Medication you have to pay for. Lifestyle change, that's on you. So, and I won't go too deep into that because that could be a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, but I think the key there is also a little bit about understanding yourself. Understanding yourself, understanding what makes you tick. The key is that you have to move. And, you know, science will say that there are some things that you should include, like there should be some form of strength training. You know, there should be some form of cardio training. There should be something related to range of motion or flexibility and how you move and technique. And so there are still some criteria, but there's many different ways to get that done. And know yourself, know what makes you tick. You know, what's always promoted the most doesn't always have to be the way that you do it. So functional fitness for that 1 hour could be great. Maybe for other people it could be calisthenics. Maybe for others it's martial arts. Maybe for others it's going on a hike, whatever it may be. But know yourself, find what motivates you, and that I think would help to inspire people to move more as well. But so shifting gears a little bit to culture, we're kind of been on it though the whole time too. Western, you know, I still kind of ties into what we were saying, but the Western culture, you said that we live in a capitalistic society, and you know, the whole gym setting and all these things. I also had a question in there about the Indigenous perspective. Do you think that the Indigenous perspective, and when I say that, I'm saying it loosely, you can interpret it how you see fit, but does the Indigenous perspective have value or something? Obviously it's value. What can it bring to us in Western society? Is there anything regarding movement or physical literacy, or I think the whole yin approach in my eyes, there's a lot of Indigenous insight there in and of itself. But is there anything that stands out to you regarding Indigenous culture, physical literacy, your body?
100%. I think as human beings, change from being nomadic in many different forms to now organizing into what we call a civilization. Many of the ways that we had to organize, division of labor, so now roles that before, when you're living nomadic, everyone has to be, I'm going to use the term physically literate here very loosely. Everyone had to be physically literate. The entire tribe. Everyone had to know how to hunt, how to gather, how to put, the basic information that was needed to survive and thrive in the natural environment. Every member of that society had to know it. Once we go into civilization, now you create people who are librarians. So now in order for a librarian to be able to continue, someone else has to be getting the food and doing things of that nature. I think the indigenous view is the ultimate view in terms of physical literacy, because their whole way of life involved that. And something that I can point to give examples, and you can draw the parallels how you want to. Benjamin Franklin spoke to the fact that during his time, whenever Europeans were captured and brought into indigenous societies, they rarely would want to come back into the European society. Also, that when the indigenous children were captured and brought into the European society, raised as such, given certain liberties, whenever they found out that they belonged to that other society, almost without any example, would always go back. One of the things that the indigenous describe the Western society that is very slavish. You expend so much of our time doing things for some goal that is not immediate, that is not here and now. It's not rooted in the natural processes. So, is one better or worse? Right, wrong? I'm not here and I'm not in a position to say that. But what aligns better with me and my way of living, I would say would be the indigenous worldview. I try to be outside and as natural as I possibly can, but I am also born in Western Hemisphere. And the country I come from has actually the longest continuous Western settlement in the entire Western Hemisphere, and that's Santo Domingo. So to that end, I am a mixture of both, and I love to be that way because it allows me to see reality from, I feel, a holistic perspective. Not knocking one or the other, I think both exist, and nature allows both to exist for a reason. What that reason is, that's for the next podcast.
Yeah, I always like to bring up too, and put a good reminder out there. You know, as someone who identifies as really, I'm a Brooklyn kid, but definitely the bloodline goes back to Europe in some way. I did do a DNA test. There was some Arab in there, some other things, but either way, there's definitely a lot of European ancestry in my bloodline. But that when we say indigenous, every place in the world, including Europe, has indigenous populations. And it's a good reminder to let everyone know how much we have in common. Because we get so caught up in the whole Western versus indigenous, and then when we think of Western, we think mostly of maybe Europe or some other places. But really the truth is, no matter who was, you know, you mentioned before the piece about civilization, you know, any time a civilization was kind of taking over, indigenous populations were kind of wiped out, but we had indigenous populations everywhere. And so I'm sure even within Europe, you take that same example of maybe someone who was a part of some indigenous tribe in Europe and then got overcome by like ancient Rome, you know, and I'm sure they might have felt similar things, like I would have loved to be back in my, you know, indigenous ways. And then even if you're thinking, because now we put the label on ancient Rome, even people who lived in what would be now modern day Italy had indigenous tribes there as well. Like it just goes on and on and on of that piece lives in all of us. And I almost think that we could potentially, or do you think we could benefit from getting in touch with our indigenous side?
100%. The world needs to. Otherwise, human civilization as it is will collapse. If we and I just give a quick example here. The natives from this part of the world said that pre the arrival of post-Columbian Europeans, you could drink out of any river and be totally fine. We cannot drink from the Hudson River. We cannot drink from the East River. You know, and that's because directly linked to our way of life. Nothing else. The way of life that we, and that's to your point that you're making, all civilizations as they expanded displaced people whose ways of life did not align with the we're staying in this spot mindset, aka civilization. You build houses out of stone. That's not moving. As opposed to being able to totally pack everything that you have into a wagon and be able to move, and constantly doing that as to allow every region that you settle in to regenerate. That's not our ways. So in order for one way to expand, it seemed that we had to invade that other way of living. So it's a battle of cultures. It's a battle of ways of life. You know, something you taught me, Anthony, that was always stayed with me and helped rationalize this. And from the martial arts culture, the whole Taekwondo versus. So one is a sport and one is a way of life. And in the Western view, we've kind of denuded or removed ways of life that are physical, literacy enriched. And all we have is sport, which some people take part in and some do not. But again, even in sport, the aim of sport, and any competitor will tell you, is to win. Whether it's at this sport, that sport, whatever. The aim is to win, to get better. But when you now have a way of life that is totally in alignment with the natural processes, you're constantly going to move because it's your way of life. It's not dependent on some contest or some societally created reason for it, but rather it's how you live your life. Would our society benefit from people who are more active, healthier as a result, and more connection as a result of being outside more? Of course they would. Is there profit in that? then now we see why.
Yeah, I think the future will have to be, you can kind of see it in architectural designs of new buildings, like green buildings. It's like, yeah, you're still building a building, which in and of itself is like a civilization, or, you know, there's still that piece there, but now just built in a way that's a little more, it has some of our wild sides in there. You know, there'll be more green plants, the courtyard will be fully open, there'll be community spaces where people can collaborate together. And so I think when we start to prioritize, the design will start to manifest. And you know, what you said about how you even design your own home, where now you have like the rings hanging and all these different things, and you know, when the way you play with your kids and all that stuff. And I think right now the design of our spaces are not so fit to get in touch with some of those things, but going forward we'll start to realize the importance of it. And I would like to bring someone on the podcast that can talk to like design and things like that, but like architectural design or building physical spaces or workspaces. But eventually I think they'll start to blend together where you know, the other day I was working on some podcast stuff and I was sitting in the climbing gym, and you know, this goes back to how will we make money on it. You know, that's the only way things end up. But it seems like being in a space like that, so I was working from the laptop and doing all this stuff, but then I was in the climbing gym and I said, you know what, there's a point I was sitting there for too long. I shut the laptop, put on my climbing shoes, started to climb a bit, then I came back to it after, then I went and ate a little something. Then I think our workspaces, our living spaces will have these physical things built in them, and I think that'll be the way that the future will kind of have to go if we want to prioritize health. And there's smart people like Google and companies that have realized when you prioritize the health of your employees, they actually perform better. You know, so eventually I think that our physical spaces will hopefully, and workspaces will start to change in a way where you know, these things will naturally just be there and easily accessible, and there'll be more flexibility to be able to take a break and go and enjoy them and be physical more often. So yeah, I think we're getting there. Yeah, it's nice to hear your piece about the indigenous cultures, but let me see if I had one or two others here before we start to wrap things up, because I know we're at 51 minutes. But we had physical literacy we talked about the Indigenous perspective. I did want to talk a little bit more about meditation, we'll get back to it, but this was the last fun one I didn't want to forget. Alan Watts. So this is kind of going to shift gears a little bit regarding pain. There was a lesson you gave me, and I want to get it on here, and you stop me at any point you remember it, but where if we viewed pain like when we exercise and the pain that we feel during exercise, if we just felt that pain on a day-to-day basis, we would almost think we were dying. But the fact that we feel it and it's tied to a goal, do you remember those?
Right, this is paraphrasing actually Dr. Sam Harris.
Okay.
So he gave a very succinct description. In essence, the reason, or back to the gym, the reason why we can go into the gym and bench press until our chest hurts so bad is because we know that the reason we're doing that is to become stronger. So that's where now our conscious attention, that part that is slower, is pivotal as well. So it's not to paint one as higher or better, lower or worse. The reason we have to speak of it in this way is because we have a society that says that the conscious attention is more important than everything else. We know that that's not necessarily the case. It's on par with everything else, necessary. If the pain that we felt, the burn that we felt from lifting weights was a symptom of a disease, we would not be able to bear it. Because now our conscious mind sees it as, I'm dying. But because we know that that pain is associated to improving a goal or getting stronger, we're able to endure it and bear it. So we have to help people to see movement as something that is absolutely essential and necessary to them, so they can bear the pain, the uncomfort associated with it. I think that's
Yeah, I know it kind of shifted a little away from culture and embodiment and some other. It still all fits in. But I remember you giving that lesson. I was like, that was something I want to have, because I'm going to have to just edit that one little piece and put that clip right there on Instagram. But getting back to it, so the last thing I wanted to say was, when you meditate, like, just to have something a little more concrete, when you meditate, how do you do it?
My favorite form is like through yoga or active meditation. So when I get into handstands, any type of balancing, I have to bring my entire conscious awareness into that moment, because any attention given to something else throws your balance off. So by repeatedly putting myself in increasingly more difficult situations to balance, that translates to when I'm now in front of an audience, in front of children, in front of other people, being able to handle that situation with the same level of awareness and presence, to remain calm and to be the most ferocious beast that I can be because of that calmness. But that calmness is only forged through the putting myself in painful situations, training that elicit the growth necessary to remain calm in what the crucible of life is going to throw at me. So for me, my favorite form of meditation started with an analytical meditation, which is reading text that brings your mind to it. My favorite in that capacity will be the Tao Te Ching. Every day in pursuit of the Tao, which translates to as the way, you drop something. Every day in pursuit of knowledge, you add something. So something back to one of the original points we came into, but my favorite form currently is active meditation. So through balancing and walking. So a lot of walking meditation is pivotal to me. Calms my mind, no music in the ear, just listening to the sounds around me, feeling the ground beneath me, walking at a pace that allows me to breathe at a normal rate, because your breathing rate affects your thoughts as well. Notice when you're angry, you're breathing a lot faster. Blood starts to rush from your gut to your arms. Again, you come into awareness of these processes as you slow down. So meditation, very important.
And any breathing exercises that you do, would they be separated? Is there...
No. I haven't gotten, to be honest, as advanced in just breathing techniques. I tend to use diaphragmatic breathing as my catch-all to ensure that I'm using my full breathing capacity. I've practiced a little bit here and there, pranayama, which is breath control, and I'm holding your breath for a certain amount of time before you exhale, holding the inhalation for a certain amount of time, and so on and so forth. But I would call myself a novice in that realm. Although I constantly do speak to breathing. Breathing for me more so is specific to movement. So I know how to breathe when I'm running to ensure that I can maximize my running performance, how to breathe when I'm doing handstands to maximize my handstand performance, how to breathe when now I feel anxiety kicking in as a result of something in my environment and calm myself down. So I understand breathing from that perspective. I haven't yet got to be honest, to the levels where I'm training my breath to, there's some people who say that they can't even stop the whole breathing process, remain aware of it. I'm not there. So there's levels that I've yet to go to. And I think as I slow down more, age, I will get more into those other layers of meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah, so the bulk of this podcast hopefully was to motivate people about the yin side of movement, getting them to slow down a bit, getting them to be more intuitive, getting them to feel. I used to say in the martial arts, and I kind of hinted to it again in the beginning, that piece about accessing the whole spectrum. But I used to say the ultimate display of martial artists is power, maybe your punch, for example. And in order to punch really well, you have to have things turn on at the right time and things turn off at the right time. So as my right side of my body is maybe like overcoming, and my left side of my body is yielding. So like, in order to rotate, I need to have something turn on and something turn off. If both of them turn on at the same time, you're not going to be very powerful. You have to have one muscle, the active side on, the other side has to shut off. If you have both your bicep, tricep, pec, back, if literally all your muscles are on, you're not going to move. You're going to be isometric. So in order to move, in order to be powerful, the most powerful people are able to turn on the right muscles at the most extreme and shut off the right muscles at the most extreme. And the furthest they can be and the further they can separate their extremes, the more powerful they'll be. And those extremes are yin and yang, on and off, overcoming and yielding. And we often in the Western world talk a lot about yang and getting better and stronger and everything in that realm. And I think it is important to bring some importance back to the yin side. And so, yeah, I think you did it very well today. Anything you want to add?
Thank you, Ant. Thank you for having me. It's a true honor and privilege. If anything I can add, and if I can put into one succinct statement, make movement priority. Get in tune with yourself. That means your mental processes, your emotional capacity, how your body relates to space and time. Find someone that you can share all your thoughts with, whether that's friend, lover, therapist, whomever. It's important for your also overall understanding of yourself. So all of these things together allow you to be a holistic human being and the best version of yourself. Peace and love.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you back on again at some point, right?
Looking forward to it.
All right, we're going to shut this off. All right, everyone.